de verano para jóvenes del distrito. Gracias a este programa trabajé en la oficina del alcalde para asuntos latinos y espero continuar trabajando ahí en un futuro. Como es el caso para muchos de ustedes, para mí es un gusto poder participar en la conversación de hoy para hablar sobre temas importantes que afectarán a muchas personas en Washington, D.C. Entonces, para iniciar la conversación me gustaría darle la bienvenida a la alcaldesa Muriel Bowser. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the call. My name is Christian, and in 2015 and 2016, I was a participant in the district summer youth employment program. Through the program, I work in Muriel Bowser's office on Latino affairs, and I look forward to continuing to work there in the future. Like many of you, I am excited to be part of today's conversation to talk about important issues that will affect many people in Washington, D.C. So now, to get the conversation going, I would like to welcome to the call Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Thank you, Christian. And I want to thank all of you for being here and everybody who is listening on the call or watching us on Channel 16. We are in the beautiful Ron Brown Preparatory High School in Ward 7. Ron Brown is led by Principal Benjamin Williams. And here we educate young men to get ready for life, to be great citizens, and to represent the district well. I'm also joined by Pastor Keith Bird, who chairs my Interfaith Council, as well as other members of my team, including Monica Palacio, who is the director of the Office of Human Rights, and Jackie Reyes, who is the director of the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs, and Rashad Young, who is our city administrator, and Brian Kenner, who is our deputy mayor for economic development, and Roger Mitchell, who is our chief medical examiner. We are also joined here at Ron Brown by members of the community. I wanted to bring everybody together to talk about the values of the District of Columbia. Let me start by saying Election Day was almost 2 weeks ago, and if you're like me, it was quite a surprise. It was a day when Washingtonians took to the polls in record numbers to cast their votes for the first woman president. And while we came out strong in Washington in support of Hillary Clinton, the country went in another direction. I might also add that more than 80% of Washingtonians voted for Washington, D.C. to become the 51st state on that day. The incoming president said a lot of things during his campaign that most of us in the district cannot and will not ever support. Some of those things he's backed away from or tweaked, and others he is not. So President-elect Trump has no public record. He's never been a legislator, a mayor, or a governor, so we don't know exactly what we will get from a Trump White House and a Trump presidency. But we do know our values. We know what we stand for in Washington, D.C., and we know what it takes to keep our city growing and to keep it inclusive, and to do that for all Washingtonians and across all 8 wards. So today, here at Ron Brown, with this school that we opened just this year, with a focus on how we close the achievement gap between young boys of color and their peers. This school in itself is a representation of our values. So I want everyone to know, as mayor, I'm working tirelessly to ensure that we're always prepared. We will stand in opposition, strong opposition, to any policies that threaten our values, while we continue to seek common ground on the things that will be helpful to our city, like creating more jobs, more pathways to the middle class, and investments in our infrastructure to prepare us for the growth that continues to come our way. So I have ordered my team to review and assess a broad range of challenges and strategies to protect the programs and policies that we all value. and to identify concrete proposals that we can put before the new president to keep the district moving in the right direction. I got into public service because I love local government. More specifically, I love my hometown. And because I love and I am honored by the opportunity to lead the people of Washington, D.C. So while we cannot be certain about what lies ahead, we can be certain that your government and my administration will do everything we can to protect the residents of Washington, D.C. And we will continue to be out in the community each and every day, making sure that we have our ear to the ground and that we are hearing about your anxieties and fears, but also addressing them in the best ways we know how. Since the night after Election Day, when we celebrated the Diwali, or the Festival of Lights, to this weekend, when I will be with the transgender community, in all the days in between, where I've heard from residents, been to community meetings, and responded, quite frankly, to some very pointed and anxious questions, I continue to be out each and every day, listening and learning. So we put this call together so that more Washingtonians can talk about the things that are of concern to them as we move forward in these uncertain days. As I have thought about this over the last days since the election, I know that there is great uncertainty, but I also know what may lay on the other side of that uncertainty is opportunity. But it will take us all to focus on how we can work together to protect and to promote the values of Washington, D.C. So I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to go to the phone if you've got any questions. Just to remind everyone, you can ask questions to Mayor. Questions right now. Mayor, I think we have a question. And Clarence.
Clarence, you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Speaking to this. Okay. Okay, now that the election is over, good afternoon, everyone. Now that the election is over, and with so much uncertainty and so much anxiety amongst the people, what are the steps that we plan to take as a Washingtonian nation to move forward?
Sure. So Clarence's question is the one that I think is on everybody's mind. First of all, I think the shock of the election results, a lot of people had to get over. There was certainly an expectation that we heard day after day in the media that we would wake up to one president-elect, and we woke up to a different one. And there's also the strong sense in our community, it wasn't like it was a close election in Washington, D.C. 93% of the people voted for Secretary Clinton, and she lost in the electoral, or she will lose in the electoral college. So for us, we had to really focus our government and regroup in some ways. And so I will be assigning a team to just review the policies of the president-elect. I think you will remember that he was widely criticized for not being that specific about a lot of things, not putting out policy proposals. When you go to his website, you don't really see where he stands on a lot of things. So we are teasing out his public comments, his 100-day plan, and any other public policies that are out there. Now, the biggest issue that has concerned us at the start of all of this is, what does it mean for vulnerable communities in Washington, D.C.? What does it mean? He has said that he is going to round up people across the nation and try to figure out what their immigration status is and put them out of the country. He has said that he's going to ban Muslims from coming into the United States or require Muslims to register somewhere. So these are the things that have boiled over and heated up and are causing great anxiety in our city. So what we affirmed in the last days is one of a value that we have been committed to for a number of years, and that is that we are a sanctuary city. So what does it mean? What do people understand it to mean to be a sanctuary city? What it means most directly for people's safety is that the our police department, MPD, is not an agent of the federal government. What it means is that our police are focused on protecting and serving DC residents without regard to their immigration status. So no Metropolitan Police Department officer is allowed to ask anybody what their immigration status is. If you call 911, the police will come out and help you. If you witness a crime in Washington, D.C., and you want to call the police to offer help, then they are going to provide that help. If you call 311 and you need other government assistance, you need trash picked up or alleys cleaned, or you want to report a missing light, or you need to know how your child can register in school, you call us, because nobody is going to ask you your immigration status. And that is what it means to be a sanctuary city. So we have to keep enforcing it. We've had over a year of the rhetoric around rounding up people and putting them out of the country. And we've only had a few days of reassuring them what the law and policies of the District of Columbia are. So that's what it means to be a sanctuary city. So beyond that, Clarence, we got to figure out all of the other policy proposals that he made. Somebody asked me, in fact, at a community meeting, she read a letter to me and asked me about these Muslim registries. I had never heard that proposal presented to us or heard him even talk about the registries, but it's been much talked about in the last few days. And we reject any notion of people, because of their faith, signing up for a registry. It's against everything that we believe in as Americans.
Thanks, Mayor. And the next question we have is from Kim Tignor.
Good afternoon. First, I wanted to thank Mayor Bowser for putting this together. I think that, recognizing these times and the ease that it comes from having conversations like this, our family is especially grateful. My name is Kim Tignor. This is my daughter, Sophia Fauci. We live in Ward 4, born and raised in this city. And, it has been unavoidable. Our daughter, they talk about it at school, they talk about it outside, and and when I say it, I'm talking about the language, the rhetoric, and the outcome of this election. And I guess my question to you is, if you had any advice or guidance as to how we should be talking to our kids about the election and what has happened, or the aftermath of it.
Well, Kim, what I would say, and certainly parents know their children the best, and I can't tell you the number of moms and dads who have said that they're having trouble explaining this to their kids. Mm-hmm. The kids expected one thing and have been shocked, and they don't really quite know how to process it. So I would suggest taking it on, even if they're not asking you about it, they're thinking about it, and so that's also important. But I would also tell them to be hopeful, that we have had uncertain transitions in this country many times before, and that while we are going to prepare for the worst case scenarios, we can be hopeful about the possibility of things working out better. But the other thing that you should tell them is that we have to do the things that cities do and we have to do the things that families do, no matter even sometimes if we feel bad about it. So the day after the election, the sun came up, people had to go to work, people had to go to school, people had to shop and put dinner on the table, and those things persist right now. And so each one of us has a responsibility to carry on with our daily lives, but also stay focused on the things that we can do to protect our values in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Mayor. We have a number of people on the phone asking questions right now, and we're trying to get them through. We're having one small technical difficulty, but in the meantime, Pastor, do you have a question for the mayor?
I do, in terms of, and let me just start by saying I do appreciate the mayor's strong stance and reaffirmation of the policy of the District of Columbia as a sanctuary city. And I do realize the political implications of that, in terms of some of the rhetoric has even suggested that some 300 cities across our country who are designated as sanctuary cities, that under a President-elect Trump administration, there's a threat of federal funding for those particular cities. And like no other city across the country, the District of Columbia is most vulnerable because of our status. And we're looking to change that very soon to become the 51st state, as you said earlier. What are you and your administration prepared to do in light of that reality that the president-elect may very well, we may have a challenge in terms of funding, and it may be a political kind of battle as a result of this statement that you have made with regard to D.C. being a sanctuary city?
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Pastor, and also for highlighting our unique status in our system. And this puts a clear point on why we have to be a state in order to be treated like every other American. So the main difference between us and New York City and Los Angeles and Chicago and other major cities is that their budgets don't go to the Congress. And ours does. But I will say there have been a number of politicians who have threatened a lot of things as it relates to the District of Columbia, and we know the issues that they tend to focus on. And I'm not sure that Trump will be any different. They tend to be the social issues. And most recently, it has been the budget autonomy referendum. It's been around women's choice and health care, needle exchange, and the like. Those hot button social issues that legislators want to make a point, a national point in D.C., a point that they can't make in their own electorates. So that is a concern that we have. We also, and the way that they usually achieve that is through a rider on a piece of legislation or a rider on our budget itself. And so that we have to continue to be concerned about and focused on. But we will need the people of the District of Columbia to stand up and speak up and say if the Congress, which in some cases may be more of a threat than the president in this regard, to stay out of D.C. affairs. And they have a lot of other things to do, right?
Absolutely.
And so we've said before, don't focus on us. Focus on the big things that the Congress needs to be focused on.
We've got 5,000 people on the line, and Ifrika from Columbia Heights has a question for you. If you just say her name.
Ifrika, this is Mayor Bowser. What's your question?
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor Bowser. Thank you so much for having this open forum. I truly appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, likewise. I just basically wanted your strategy in terms of how to counteract the racial profiling post-election that's been happening. I unfortunately experienced them while being a ballot clerk at the precinct where I was volunteering to poll. So seeing all the different high school high school students protest and leave and walk out of school. I'm a former teacher. I've taught at Cardozo, Wilson High School, Matilla Minor, Harriet Tubman, and many other schools in Arlington Public County. So it's just very disconcerting for me. I won't lie, I've been depressed for the past week, just given the anxiety, that added anxiety I feel in regards to how do I keep myself safe and how do I also keep those around me safe, especially where the young people, the young adolescents are involved. So I was wondering your tips.
Well, and thank you for that question, Ifrika. And we especially want to remind everybody how far we've come with policing in Washington, D.C. And we're always learning and we're always staying focused on how our police interact with the public. Recently, for example, there was a study done comparing policing practices in D.C. now compared to the late 90s when we had a lot of issues. And the same person did the study and found that largely Washington, D.C. and its practices and its police force was moving in the right way and had progressed and not retreated to the poor practices that led to poor police and community relations in the late 90s and early 2000s. So the first thing I would say is that we have an excellent and professional police force. But more than that, we have police leadership that is committed to the constitutional enforcement of laws in the district. So racial profiling falls out of that category. Asking someone about their immigration status falls out of the policies allowed by MPD. So our strategy, quite simply, is to remind our officers in no uncertain terms what their job is, and that is to protect and serve the people of the District of Columbia without regard to religion or immigration status. We also, Ifrika, are very committed to an independent review of our policing. Now, the police work for me, so you may say, hey, Bowser, I hear you, but maybe you're going to side with the police and not me. We have an independent police complaints board here that all complaints about police activity can go to. But I will tell you, I take a complaint about a police officer acting outside of his or her authority very seriously, and we will not tolerate any unconstitutional practices in our department. More than that, there are other law enforcement agencies all around our country, but especially here. The president lives here. We have the Secret Service. We have ATF, and they can be helpful to us at times. But they don't generally attempt to police local issues or local crimes. But we want to be mindful of any interaction that the federal agencies are having with our people too, so we can have at the highest levels conversations about our expectations for policing in the district.
And Mayor, on that same note, you have another question from Lenora.
Yes, Lenora, what's your question? Lenora, are you there?
I appreciate what you're doing. It's great. Recently, last week, a friend of mine had a traffic encounter, bad encounter in far northwest with someone. The person started screaming at her, Trump, Trump, Trump. It's like he was trying to intimidate her. She was frightened. She had her baby daughter with her, and so she just tried to keep driving. What do we do about these situations when people try to intimidate us or frighten us?
Pastor, do you want to jump in on that one?
Well, that's an excellent point that you make, and I think that the tone and the tenor throughout this election cycle has been poor. I think people have to be reminded that words matter, and so whether it's an idle threat, whether it's a perceived threat, it still has an impact on those who are at the end of it. And so I would simply, we talk a lot within the police department, and I'm glad Madam Mayor mentioned our professional police officers. We talk a lot about police officers being able to de-escalate situations. Well, I'm of the mind that those of us who are in the community, who live, work, and operate in the District of Columbia, each of us has to have at some point a level of de-escalation skills at our disposal. There are people out here that quite frankly are crazy. They don't have good sense. And they feed on the fear of other people, particularly in this political climate. And I think that as a community, that we need to take personal responsibility, first of all, for our own actions, for how we speak to one another, for how we interact with each other, to be civil and decent. That's who we are. That's what we believe. And then to help other people do likewise in terms of their behavior and their interactions with other people. I'm not a big fan of fear. I think once we allow ourselves to be bullied around and be put in a position where we're fearing things, we've already lost. But I'm a fan of faith, and faith always conquers fear. Love always conquers hate. And if we will bind together under these principles that all of us can agree on, whether we're black, white, green, or yellow, whether we're Catholic, whether we're Baptist, whether we're non-believers, if we can gather around these principles, we can defeat this mentality that thinks somehow that this insightful and indecent behavior can win. We can be victorious. And I think I thank you for your call, and I understand that fear is real. But I want to suggest to you and to all of those on the call and listening here today, faith is just as real. And if we believe in a higher power, one who is able to provide and keep us, then it ought to inspire us to do likewise for one another.
Thank you, Pastor. And we have one other question from an email account. Folks are emailing questions in, Mayor, to engagement.dc@dc.gov right now.
Okay.
We have a question from Ms. Shelton in Ward 6, and she was wondering if you appoint a liaison to liaise with the Trump administration.
Well, that's a great question, and we're working through that. We had our first meeting with what is known as the Presidential Inaugural Committee that plans the inauguration for the president in conjunction with law enforcement agencies. This type of organization is put together for every 4 years for a new president or a president that's being sworn in for the second time. And we have been doing it the same way, as I understand, for the last 28 years. DC has a unique responsibility in that we host the inauguration. It is our Department of Homeland Security that is working with other law enforcement agencies to secure parade routes and special event routes as well. So yes, we have had that initial conversation, and I also expect that we will have conversations outside of the inaugural planning for how the new administration will work with Washington, D.C. I can tell you how it's worked with the Obama administration. The president has an office of intergovernment affairs where there's one person that generally works with mayors. That's worked pretty well for us, and there may be some other things that we suggest to the new administration.
Great. Mayor, we're going to take one last question from in the room.
Hi, my name is Deanne Rubin, and I'm in Northwest. And my question was actually similar to what you answered. Has anyone from the Trump administration reached out to you to meet with you? If not, do you expect they will? And what do you hope to impart to him in that meeting or his representative?
Sure. So as I mentioned, he has appointed a presidential inaugural committee with a chairman and staff. They are getting up and running, and I have met with them. I expect also to seek a meeting to talk about what's important to Washington, D.C. And what we've also found, Deanne, is that there are a lot of misconceptions about our city, and we've heard misconceptions misconceptions about our city come from President-elect Trump. And we want to clear up those misconceptions. This idea that Washington, D.C. solely exists because of the largesse of the federal government is a misnomer that needs to be cleared up. There is very limited federal support of D.C., and there's almost no federal support of D.C. that's unlike any other state in the union. So most of the funds that flow from the federal government also flow to states. So we want to be very clear about that. We want to separate federal Washington in his mind from local Washington. So you have heard the phrase, well, I won't repeat it, but it has to do with the swamp. And we want him to be clear that the White House and the Capitol and in the mall and all the government buildings, but more importantly, all the squabbles between federal officials, that's not us. That's federal Washington. Local Washington is wonderful neighborhoods, 670,000 people, and it's a city that is working very, very well. We also want to be clear with the president-elect that we seek statehood for Washington, D.C. That is the only way we can be true Americans. His vice presidential running mate has been a supporter in the past of D.C. having a voting representative in the Congress. Mr. Trump himself has been pretty clear about separating what states do from Washington, D.C. And he hasn't been on the record saying that he's opposed to statehood. No, he hasn't been on the record saying he's a supporter either. So we want to be very clear about that. The next very big priority for us is what role the federal government can play in reinvesting in Metro. Metro is a unique system across the United States in that it serves thousands of federal government employees as riders and millions of visitors that come to our area because we are the nation's capital. So we think the federal government has a unique role to play, not an oversized role, mind you, but its fair share of how Metro operates and how we restore Metro to be the best system anywhere in the world. And that's what I think a person like Donald Trump would expect in the nation's capital, that we had the best system in the world. And I think that he can play a role in that. So I won't go on to all of the things of the other agencies like the National Park Service and our parks that are concerning. I am also concerned about a direction that the Trump administration could go with criminal justice reforms. And we saw some progress beginning to happen in the Obama administration, and we see the direction he wants to go to at justice. And so I think when you ask me about what type of planning and strategy are we engaged in, one real area that we need to continue to be focused on is criminal justice.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I think that was the last question that we have from the community today, but I know that there are a lot of questions still out there, and folks can go ahead and email us at engagement.dc@dc.gov, and we're going to post answers to all of our questions on engagement.dc.gov. That's engagement.dc.gov, where you can already find some frequently asked questions on there. Thank you, Mayor. If there's anything you want to say to wrap up the call?
Well, fantastic. So I think how many people are we talking to?
We were talking to 5,000 people now.
Well, fantastic. Well, since everybody's here, why don't we make a little bit more time for them? Okay. How about that? So if there are people waiting to ask a question, let's get to it.
Mayor, we have a question about statehood.
Okay.
Anise from Ward 5.
Hello, Mayor Bowser. How are you?
Great. How are you, Denise?
Fine. Anise.
Oh, hi, Anise.
I know. Yes. I know that a lot of us were going to get Secretary State Hillary Clinton, who
openly and very supportive of statehood, but it didn't happen that way. I am wondering what are the next steps for the referendum and overwhelming vote for that, and in general, what can residents to get support from this administration for DC statehood?
Well, thank you, Anise. And let me first thank you for your leadership over a couple of decades and fighting for DC statehood. But more than that, reminding us all that incremental steps are fine, but the only way that DC residents can be treated like full Americans in every other state is to become a state and have 2 voting senators and our share of voting Congress people. So let me thank you about that. I will tell you, I think you know that I have appointed Beverly Perry in my office to galvanize our statehood efforts, and with Beverly's excellent leadership, we have really used our new Columbia Statehood Commission as a vehicle to set the strategy, to have a new constitution approved by overwhelming support of the people of the District of Columbia, to set the new boundaries for the new state, to make that very clear, and to confirm to everybody that our city is moving in the right direction, and we will have a representative form of government when we become the 51st state. So in December, I expect that we will work with Chairman Mendelson to reconvene the new Columbia Statehood Commission to talk about our transmission to the Congress. I expect that the council will complete its work, and we will be able to attach the new plan to an admissions act that the Congresswoman will circulate. Now, in the meanwhile, I think we all learned that we continue to have work to do among the states. And I think it's incumbent upon us to target the right states to get support among the members of Congress, so that when Congresswoman Norton is circulating that bill, she will have even more support among her colleagues. I think that the overwhelming vote that we got, Anise, also gives us all the ability to talk about how we are going to adequately fund a public education campaign for the states. It is clear, and I know when you travel around and you ask people, and I talked to Deanna already about the misconceptions of Washington, most people don't know that DC residents don't have the same rights that they do. They just don't know. And when they do know, it seems like a no-brainer that we should and they should speak to their Congress people about how to get those rights for all Americans. But we have to keep pushing on those issues and examine every strategy. So a long answer to your question, but we will reconvene the new Columbia Statehood Commission. We will prepare our new Constitution and boundaries and vote to a new admissions act that Congresswoman Norton will circulate in January.
Great. Mayor, we've got Jenny from Ward 7. If you would say that to the phone.
Hi, Jenny. What's your question?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
I don't know how to... Okay. My concern is for the Washingtonians to go to the inauguration. I feel it's too much of a danger for anybody to go because of all the hoopla that's been going on with this person that's coming into office. I think it's sad that it's taxpayers' money involved. I think I just find it so bad that we have to put our city in jeopardy for people that could be really in danger to go to an inauguration, want to see, because this is another president. This is still part of our history that's coming into our city, and all the policing that is going to have to involve. It's going to have to involve more policing than what has ever happened in the history of the presidency of the United States of America.
Well, thank you for that call. And just so you know, it is, I feel, and I'll speak as somebody whose family's been here for 5 generations. I feel privileged that.
Yeah, I've been here all my life.
All right. And
yeah,
so,
I've been here all my life.
I'm just going to share my kind of perspective, that I feel privileged that we're a city where the president lives. And that's the case, it's any president, right? And in this case, it's going to be Donald Trump. In 4 years, 4 years from now, it could be somebody else. But that's what it means to be a democracy. The people have spoken, and we're going to have a new president, whether we like it or not. That's what's going to happen.
That's right.
That's right. So now we have to turn to kind of what my job is and what our job is as citizens. And my job is to make sure I put with the 33,000 people that work for me, is that we put the best foot forward of Washington, D.C. And so that goes to making sure the parade route is okay, that that the barricades are put in the right places so people can move safely, to working with our federal partners on coordination issues, or making sure we have the proper policing. And let me just say, our officers, of course, are going to support these events, but our officers are also going to be in neighborhoods keeping D.C. safe. And in order to do that, we ask for assistance from around the country, and we're expecting 3,000 officers to come to support the event, and that's the same number that we ask for every inauguration. So it's not an inordinate amount of protection that we're seeking. That I'm also well aware that the people of the District of Columbia may decide to do something else that day, and that'd be fine too. It is a federal holiday in the National Capital region, so some people will come down and watch the inauguration. Some people will exercise their First Amendment rights, and we want to make sure that there are safe places for that to occur as well. And so what I would say to you is, we have to focus on the job I do, what the government's job is. And as Pastor Bird mentioned, I think that we'll all kind of look deep into ourselves to figure out how we can be a part of moving forward.
Now, Mayor, we got a question from Janice in Ward 1. If you just say Janice.
Hi, Janice. What's your question?
Oh, my question is about the entitlements that Paul Ryan is talking about, working with Trump to cut out Medicaid, Medicare, Obamacare, and how is that going to affect the District of Columbia residents who do, enter those programs?
Right. Was that Tanya?
Janice.
Janice, I'm sorry. Thank you for that question. And I should have mentioned earlier when I was talking about statehood and Metro, one of the big concerns that we have about some of the pledges that Trump has made has been around the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. In our city, if he, as he has said, rolls it back, repeals it, we're not sure what he would replace it with, we could have Washingtonians who are above the federal poverty, the 200% of federal poverty, and who have pre-existing conditions, they could lose insurance. Insurance companies could just flat out stop providing coverage for them. And in many cases, these people are sick and very sick, and they would not be able to get insurance. If we were, as a city, to say that's unacceptable and we want to pick it up and provide them, add them to city insurance coverages, conservative estimates have it at $300 million to $500 million, and we're looking at that right now. And I think that is something that we have seen the president-elect kind of soft pedal back, saying that he likes the 26-year-old coverage provision. Their 26-year-old can stay on his parents' coverage. He likes having pre-existing conditions covered. But what I think he fails to say when he has that discussion is that those are puzzle pieces that fit together that make it work. And taking out one of the puzzle pieces, especially the the mandate for having everybody participate makes the whole puzzle come apart. So we are very concerned about insurance coverages. Now, still, we're looking at some other things that he said, like, for example, abolishing the Department of Education. We think that the national standards around education have made all of our schools better, and we hope that that doesn't happen. We've heard about him say that he's going to walk away from agreements that President Obama has entered to as it relates to fighting climate change. We think that's a horrible thing, to send the signal not only to Americans but to the world that America is not going to be a part of the solution when it comes to fighting climate change. So we've heard those things too. So we will, and as I mentioned, I hope to have a clear analysis of some of these proposals in the coming weeks so we know what we're facing. And quite frankly, this is also a conversation I'm having with the Council of the District of Columbia about how we properly plan when it comes to our budget and new initiatives and things that loom on the horizon.
Mayor Ann from Ward 4 has a question about vulnerable neighbors.
Okay, Ann, what's your question? Ann, are you there?
Oh, yes. I am hoping that, Mayor Bowser, that we are able to disseminate accurate information. There is so much fear and so many rumors swirling around that I think the district government could do a real service by setting up a mechanism whereby residents can find out what's been decided, what's going on, and what each of us can do to make our city safe. I'm especially concerned about our vulnerable populations, undocumented persons, and others who are living in fear right now.
Yes, Ann, and I appreciate that. And we can continue to collect questions and frequently asked questions so that we can get clear information out to residents. And we will work for sure to put that in a single place on the district's website, and we will do it in multiple languages. So Ann got the second to last question.
Okay. Mayor, Olga from Ward 1 is on the phone for you.
Okay, Olga, you have the final word. What's your question?
Hi, Mayor. My question to you is, how can we be a help to your job? You're doing a great job ensuring that this beautiful city is safe. Living among the DC residents, we work with students and professionals, and we want to be a support. We want to support you in what you're doing. How can we help you do your job? How can we help you support? How can we spread the word out that we're going to be okay, that your work is making a big difference?
Well, thank you, Olga, and I appreciate that. And I think your question relates to Ann's earlier question, and that is pointing people in the right direction for information. And I think we've already noticed engagement.dc.gov as a place where we can put a lot of information. I'm also going to have the directors of my constituency offices, including the Office of Latino Affairs and Office of Religious Affairs, making information available about specific threats, about the threats that we've heard around immigration, the threats that we've heard around identifying identifying people's religious beliefs, and we will make that information available as well. Now, I got to tell you, Olga, it may be a time where I say, hey, Washington, D.C., I need you to show up and stand up and speak up. And when I look behind me, I want to see a whole lot of like-minded Washingtonians that say to anybody that we will stand up and speak up and fight for the values that are important to our city. So we'll stay tuned. There are a lot of ways that we are getting out information, but keep asking us questions. Keep identifying if you see a problem. Somebody told me earlier that police are asking if you think that one of our officers has asked inappropriate information, I want to know about it so that we can support them with training. If there's any other government employee that you think is not acting professionally, I want to send a strong message to our staff that, in Washington, D.C., we treat everybody with respect, and I'll continue to send that message. Also, with employers, we don't want people to face employment discrimination or discrimination when they're being served at a restaurant. So these are all things that we can be helpful with training, and I can speak up about so that everybody, when I speak up about it, it reflects the values of our city. So the last thing I'll say is keep talking to each other. I think one thing that we found to be helpful the day after the election, I just asked my whole team to come up to a conference room and listen to the president, listen to President Obama, and listen to Secretary Clinton, because they are also very bravely, they are performing what is their duty. And I respect them for that. I will perform my duty. And part of that is to hear and to keep our city safe and moving in the right direction. And that's what I intend to do. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for calling in. And we'll get through this together.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent, Madam Mayor. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Mayor, to members of the media, I have some questions, so we're just going to do it from there. So they
Okay.
can hear you from the mic.
Got it.
If you'll use that mic that's up there, and if you guys could just stay for one moment.
Okay.
Mayor, can you confirm that you are seeking an appointment with President-elect to talk about what you hope to express to him at that first meeting?
I haven't, but we will at the appropriate time.
When will that be?
I don't know.
Okay. What do you hope to express to him in your first meeting with him?
Well, I talked about some of the things that we're going to talk about, but we will affirm the values of the District of Columbia. We'll talk about statehood. We'll talk about our concerns about repealing Obamacare and how he could get involved in a very big way in transforming Metro.
Any other questions? First, a couple of questions for you. First, I heard in the middle of the call about 5,000 callers called in. Just curious on your reaction to the success of this event and the takeaway you hope comes from this event.
Well, we chose this medium because we thought we could hit a lot of people all at once. I've done calls like this before. I think this is probably the biggest. And it gets people have an opportunity to hear, even if a lot of times people don't want to ask a question, but they want to listen to their fellow residents and they want to hear at one time what's happening. And I've also found, and I don't know if Pastor Byrd would agree, that there is some solace in community. Even if it is over the phone, that people feel together. And so this won't be the last opportunity that we have to talk to residents of DC, but we thought it was a good starting point.
Prior to coming to this event, I was covering a protest on 14th Street where the White Lives Matter were in the Ronald Reagan building, and there was a group which last year numbered about 10, and this year numbered, maybe over 100, shutting down the streets, very incensed. I'm curious, this election's really polarized America in a way I don't remember another election doing. What's your reaction to the rise in the hate crimes and the tension between the different ethnicities?
Well, it's alarming. It's alarming to see, and I actually think it represents our country going backward, not forward. Or it may mean that simmering tensions are now people feel emboldened to demonstrate some long-held beliefs. And so, in either case, it's alarming. It's alarming to me. I think you heard that type of anxiety in at least one of our callers, or at least two of our callers, who said that they've heard things shouted at other people, or they feel like they don't even want to come downtown in their city because it may be unsafe because of these tensions that will brew around this inauguration. So I understand and I share the concern of rising hate or people's comfort in being hateful out loud and out in public to one another. So I agree with the things that I've heard, that we should all remember that I don't let anybody say anything racist around me. I don't let anybody talk about people of another religion or someone's immigration status in my presence. And that we have to all remember what we're going to tolerate. What you tolerate in your home, in your family, in your workplace, and what you tolerate in your city. And we don't tolerate that. So we will investigate vigorously hate crimes, vandalism on either side, and we will promote lawfulness in our city.
All right, one more, guys.
What?
Why don't we let him go?
Mayor, what are your... Thank you. Could you sum up or tell us what your thoughts are on the district as a sanctuary city, given the level of concern, I guess, that was shown the other night by some of the immigrants in the city, that their fearfulness, and against the backdrop of the threats from the Trump campaign that they would withdraw funding to sanctuary cities. So what are your thoughts? I mean, how do you see your proceeding from here?
Well, as I've said a couple of times today, that we are who we are. And we are a city that is inclusive, and we have stated it in not only by our votes, but we have stated it in our policies and our laws, that we are going to focus the attention of the Metropolitan Police Department on protecting Washingtonians and serving Washingtonians, not asking anybody what their immigration status is, not looking to see what religion someone is. It matters not. Our job is to protect and serve our city. We are less safe. We are a less safe place if an immigrant is scared to call the police. We're a less safe place if they witness a crime and can't call the police.
May I follow up to that? So what is your concern that the Trump administration might have a policy that the candidate enunciated on the campaign trail about going after or withdrawing funding, federal funding, to sanctuary cities?
What we are prepared for, and as I mentioned earlier, is analyzing all of his pledges and claims. We've seen him backtrack on some, soften some, and yet we still don't know what he's going to do when he's sworn in. So our job is to prepare for the worst case scenario, and that's exactly what we will do. I've mentioned already the concern we have around his pledges around the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, for example, which people in our city who are sick and need coverage would lose it. And if we were to pick it up locally, it could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So he has some pledges out there, including abolishing the Department of the Department of Education and the EPA, and walking away from our efforts to support climate change initiatives to combat climate change. So there's a lot that has been said that is very troubling.
All right, last one from the Post, and then we got to go, guys.
Let me just follow up on that. What preparations are being made right now for the possibility that the Trump administration could follow through on candidate Trump's threats to withdraw all federal funding from sanctuary cities? And what I'll make it a two-part question since it's the last one. What effects could that have in the District of Columbia?
I might ask what do you think that incoming administration is doing to follow through on that act, to unwind programs that they're so intricately involved in, not just in our city, but in jurisdictions across this country, I think would be tough. So from what we are doing, we first have to just analyze to the extent that we can find out what his proposals are specifically. We have to put some dollar figures to it and be prepared to be the backstop or to adjust in another way.
All right, thank you guys.
Not enough information to talk about. Christian, you did a great job.
We now return to our